Stage lights swept across the grand ballroom as Ava Hart, the 12-year-old girl who had earlier grabbed the microphone to mock "Don't touch my stuff" janitor man while the crowd roared with laughter, suddenly froze mid-stride near the dessert table. The sweet scent of almond extract hung heavy in the air around delicate pastries arranged on crystal platters. Her eyes widened with terror. Her throat began to close. The wireless microphone squealed with feedback as it tumbled from her trembling fingers. Alex, the man she had publicly humiliated, vaulted over the security barrier without hesitation. "Allergic reaction," he shouted, dropping to his knees beside her, his voice cutting through the chaos, as he guided her breathing and reached for the EpiPen clipped to his belt. Security guards rushed forward to restrain him while the crowd erupted in confused murmurs. One decisive click. One returning breath. The entire ballroom fell into stunned silence. Ava looked up at Alex through tear-filled eyes, her small frame still shaking. The words that would leave her lips next would render the entire gathering speechless. The morning had started like any other for Alex Martinez. Dawn light filtered through the maintenance office windows as he adjusted sound equipment and checked elevator cables with methodical precision. His weathered hands moved with the confidence of someone who had spent 15 years keeping buildings running smoothly. Between tasks, he video-called his 8-year-old daughter Mia, who was getting ready for school at their neighbor's apartment. "Remember to eat your breakfast, sweetheart," Alex said, his face softening as Mia's gap-toothed grin filled the small screen. "I will, Dad." Mrs. Peterson made pancakes. Mia held up her backpack proudly. "I finished my math homework all by myself. That's my smart girl. I'll see you tonight for dinner, okay? We're having spaghetti. With the good sauce from the jar?" "With the good sauce from the jar," Alex confirmed, chuckling. "I love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Dad." As Alex pocketed his phone, the freight elevator doors opened to reveal Ava Hart surrounded by her entourage. The CEO's daughter moved through the service corridors like royalty, her designer dress a stark contrast to the industrial backdrop. She was accompanied by 3 other children from her private academy, all dressed in expensive clothes that cost more than Alex's monthly rent. "Why do we have to use the back elevator?" complained one of Ava's friends, wrinkling her nose at the bare concrete walls. "Because Mother's having the main lobby photographed for the annual report," Ava replied with practiced authority. "We'll go up to the executive floor and watch the rehearsal from there." As they passed Alex's equipment cart, Ava's designer purse caught on a microphone cable. A small audio transmitter clattered to the floor, its battery compartment popping open. Without missing a beat, Ava spun around and pointed an accusatory finger at Alex. "Excuse me, you need to be more careful with your equipment," she declared loudly. "Your messy setup just broke my mother's microphone." Alex knelt down to examine the transmitter, noting that the impact had merely dislodged the battery, a 30-second fix. "Actually, it just needs the battery reseated." "No harm done," he said gently, demonstrating how to slide the battery back into place. But Ava had already moved on, grabbing a spare microphone from his cart. She clicked it on, her amplified voice echoing through the service corridor. "Attention everyone," she announced dramatically to her giggling friends. "This is what happens when maintenance people don't organize their stuff properly." The microphone picked up every word, broadcasting her performance to anyone within earshot. "Don't touch my equipment, janitor man. Some of us have important things to do." Her friends burst into laughter as Ava curtsied theatrically. The sound bounced off the concrete walls, multiplying the humiliation. Alex felt heat rise in his cheeks but continued working, his jaw set in quiet determination. He had bills to pay and a daughter depending on him. Public embarrassment was not worth losing his job over. "That was hilarious, Ava," one of her friends gasped between giggles. "Did you see his face?" Alex noticed the EpiPen secured to his utility belt, a precaution he had carried ever since Mia's friend had nearly died from a peanut allergy at a birthday party. He also made a mental note that the emergency exit near the stage was sticking again, its hinges groaning under the weight of the heavy fire door. He would need to fix that after the event concluded. As the girls disappeared into the main elevator, Alex quietly wrote on his maintenance checklist. Emergency door southwest corner mechanism jammed. Repair after gala. The corporate security briefing took place in a sterile conference room, overlooking the city skyline. Marcus Thompson, head of security, stood before a projected floor plan of the ballroom, his military bearing evident in every gesture. During live broadcast, all secondary exits will be locked except for genuine emergencies, Marcus announced to the assembled staff. "We cannot afford unauthorized personnel appearing on camera. The board of directors will be watching, along with several million viewers." Jordan Walsh, the company's public relations director, leaned forward in her chair. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive suit spoke to someone who understood the power of image. This event represents a crucial moment for our company's public perception, Jordan emphasized. The shareholders' meeting last month raised serious questions about leadership effectiveness. Tonight's gala needs to demonstrate complete corporate competence. That means no maintenance staff, no service personnel, and absolutely no disruptions visible to our audience. Marcus nodded grimly. Anyone not wearing an official event credential will be removed immediately. No exceptions. In the executive suite 40 floors above, Evelyn Hart rehearsed her keynote address for the third time that morning. The 52-year-old CEO had built her technology empire from a small startup, but recent market volatility had put enormous pressure on her leadership. Tonight's gala was more than a charity fundraiser, it was a carefully orchestrated demonstration of stability and success. The third quarter results show continued growth despite challenging market conditions, Evelyn practiced, her voice carrying the confident tone that had made her a Fortune 500 success story. Our commitment to innovation remains unwavering, and our future has never looked brighter. Her assistant knocked on the door. Mrs. Hart, there's been a power fluctuation in the building's main electrical system. The maintenance supervisor is requesting permission to keep additional technical staff on standby during the event. Evelyn paused mid-sentence. The last thing she needed was a power failure during the live broadcast. Approved, she said reluctantly. But they stay completely out of sight. Jordan made it clear this needs to be flawless. Alex had planned to finish his shift and head home to help Mia with her homework, but the electrical fault changed everything. The building's backup systems were functioning, but the primary power grid showed intermittent instability. As the senior maintenance technician on duty, he could not leave until the issue was resolved. He called Mia again, this time from the equipment room where dozens of monitors displayed the building's vital systems. Hey sweetheart, I'm going to be a little late tonight. Can Mrs. Peterson give you dinner? Is everything okay, Dad? Mia's voice carried concern beyond her years. Just some technical stuff at work. Nothing dangerous, I promise. I'll be home as soon as I can, and we'll have that spaghetti tomorrow instead. Okay, Mia said, though Alex could hear the disappointment. I made you a drawing today. It's us at the park. I can't wait to see it, Alex replied, his heart clenching. Single parenthood meant constantly juggling priorities, and work emergencies always seemed to interfere with the moments that mattered most. In the building's commercial kitchen, catering staff arranged elegant desserts on silver platters. Among them sat delicate almond cookies, their labels clearly marking them as containing tree nuts. However, in the rush to accommodate last-minute menu changes, several platters had been mislabeled. What should have been clearly marked, "Contains almonds," was instead tagged with generic dessert selection cards. The head chef noticed the labeling error, but was already overwhelmed with preparing the main course. We'll fix the signs later, she told her assistant. Just get everything upstairs before the guests arrive. As the afternoon wore on, Alex found himself increasingly isolated from the glamorous preparations happening floors above. His colleagues had been given strict instructions to avoid the main event areas, keeping their work invisible to the cameras and guests. Stay away from the ballroom during filming, his supervisor warned. Jordan from PR was very clear about this. They don't want working-class people in the background of their shots. Alex nodded, understanding the unspoken class divide that separated him from the wealthy donors gathering for cocktails. He had grown accustomed to being invisible, to fixing problems while remaining unseen by those who benefited from his work. Ava moved through the pre-event reception with practiced ease, accepting compliments on her dress and posing for photographs with family friends. Her earlier encounter with Alex had already faded from her memory, dismissed as insignificant as any other interaction with service staff. You look so mature, Ava, cooed Mrs. Henderson, one of her mother's business partners. Just like your mother at that age. Thank you, Ava replied politely, though her attention was already shifting to the dessert table that had just been wheeled into the ballroom. The elegant pastries looked irresistibly tempting. Alex continued his attempts to repair the stuck emergency exit, working with a small toolkit while monitoring his radio for updates about the power situation. The door's mechanism had been damaged by years of heavy use, and the repair required careful adjustment of several components. His phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Mrs. Peterson says dinner is ready. Wish you were here, Dad. Love you. Alex typed back quickly. Love you too, sweetheart. Save me some of whatever Mrs. Peterson made. I'll be home as soon as I can. The weight of missing another evening with his daughter settled heavily on his shoulders, but he pushed the feeling aside. The building's safety systems were his responsibility, and he would not leave until everything was secure. As the formal program began, Ava found herself drawn to the dessert table where delicate almond cookies beckoned invitingly. She selected one of the smallest pastries, biting into it without examining the mislabeled sign. The sweet, nutty flavor was pleasant at first, but within moments she felt an odd tingling sensation in her throat. "These cookies are really good," she told her friend Madison, though her voice sounded slightly hoarse. The stage lights grew brighter as the live broadcast commenced, their intensity combining with theatrical smoke effects to create a dreamlike atmosphere. For Ava, however, the sensory overload was becoming overwhelming. Her throat felt increasingly tight, and she began to feel dizzy. Marcus spoke into his radio headset, coordinating security for the live broadcast. "All secondary exits are now secured. Anyone approaching the stage area without proper credentials will be detained immediately." Jordan watched from the production booth, her eyes scanning multiple camera feeds for any potential problems. "Camera 3, tighten up on Mrs. Hart. Camera 1, avoid the service areas completely. We want this to look seamless and professional." Alex heard concerning sounds coming from the main ballroom, coughing that seemed more urgent than normal, a kind of respiratory distress that triggered his parental instincts. He had heard similar sounds before, when Mia's friend had suffered her severe allergic reaction. Moving closer to investigate, Alex peered through a service window that provided a partial view of the main floor. In the distance, he could see Ava stumbling slightly as she moved toward the center of the performance area, her hand clutched to her throat. Something was seriously wrong. Ava felt her world spinning out of control as anaphylactic shock took hold of her young body. Her throat was closing rapidly, making each breath a struggle. The microphone slipped from her trembling fingers and clattered across the polished floor with a screech of feedback that cut through the elegant music. She collapsed to her knees in the center of the spotlight, gasping for air that would not come. Panic set in as she realized she could not call for help, could not even whisper her mother's name. Alex did not hesitate. Years of military training before his transition to civilian life had ingrained in him an automatic response to crisis situations. He vaulted over the security barrier, his work boots pounding across the marble floor toward the collapsing girl. "Get away from her," Marcus shouted, grabbing Alex's arm as he reached Ava's side. "You're not authorized to be here. She's having an allergic reaction." Alex replied urgently, pulling free from the security guard's grip. "Look at her symptoms: throat closing, difficulty breathing, skin flushing. This is anaphylactic shock. She needs epinephrine immediately, or she'll die." The crowd gasped as they realized what was happening. Camera operators froze, unsure whether to continue filming or cut away. Jordan pressed her hand to her headset, shouting instructions to the broadcast team. Alex knelt beside Ava, his voice calm and reassuring despite the chaos around them. "I'm going to help you breathe, okay? Try to stay calm. Focus on my voice." He unclipped the EpiPen from his belt, the same device he had carried faithfully since learning about life-threatening allergies. With practiced precision, he removed the safety cap and positioned the auto-injector against Ava's outer thigh. "This will hurt for just a second, but it's going to save your life," he told her gently, then pressed the device firmly into place. The spring-loaded mechanism delivered its dose of life-saving epinephrine with a sharp click. Within seconds, Ava's breathing began to improve. The medication worked to reverse the allergic reaction, opening her airways and stabilizing her blood pressure. Alex continued to monitor her pulse while calling out instructions to bystanders. "Someone call 911 immediately. She needs to get to a hospital even though the worst is over. And clear some space, she needs fresh air circulation." Evelyn pushed through the crowd, her face white with terror as she saw her daughter on the floor. The powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals was suddenly just a frightened mother. "Is she going to be okay?" Evelyn asked, her voice breaking. "The epinephrine has stabilized her condition. But she needs professional medical attention," Alex replied, continuing to monitor Ava's vital signs. "The hospital will want to observe her for several hours to make sure there are no secondary reactions." As sirens approached outside, the ballroom remained in stunned silence. The same man Ava had publicly mocked and humiliated had just saved her life, risking his job and potentially his freedom to breach security protocols. Alex stood up slowly, intending to step back into the shadows and let the medical professionals take over. He had done what needed to be done, and now he wanted to return to invisibility. But Ava, still weak but breathing steadily, reached out and grabbed his hand. The aftermath unfolded with corporate efficiency. Jordan huddled with her media team, debating whether the incident should be edited out of the broadcast or spun into a positive story about company values. "We could frame this as a demonstration of our commitment to employee training and emergency preparedness," she suggested, though her tone revealed uncertainty about managing such an unexpected narrative. Marcus approached Alex with obvious reluctance. Company policy required him to file an incident report about the security breach. But the circumstances made standard protocol seem absurd. "I need to document what happened here," Marcus said awkwardly. "Technically, You violated several security procedures by entering the restricted area. Evelyn overheard this exchange and intervened immediately. There will be no incident reports filed against this man, she declared firmly. He saved my daughter's life. Alex changed out of his work shirt, which had been stained with medical supplies, and was now evidence of the evening's dramatic turn. His phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Dad, are you okay, Mrs. Peterson saw something on the news about your building. He called her immediately. I'm fine, sweetheart. There was a medical emergency at work, but everyone is safe now. I'll be home soon to tell you all about it. Did you help someone, Dad? Alex paused, looking around at the chaos still unfolding in the ballroom. Yeah, kiddo. I helped someone who really needed it. Word of the incident spread quickly through the building's staff. By the time Alex returned to the maintenance office, his colleagues had heard various versions of the story, most of them focused on the janitor who saved the CEO's daughter. The label stung, but Alex understood that his job title mattered less than his actions. He had done what any decent person would do in the same situation. As paramedics wheeled Ava toward the exit, she asked them to stop. Her mother walked beside the gurney, holding her daughter's hand and whispering reassurances. I need to say something, Ava said, her voice still hoarse but determined. Can I have a microphone? The ballroom had not yet emptied completely. Many guests remained, processing what they had witnessed and trying to understand how the evening's elegant celebration had transformed into a life-or-death drama. Jordan handed Ava a wireless microphone, unsure what the 12-year-old might say, but recognizing that attempting to silence her would only create more problems. Ava's voice trembled as she began to speak, but her words carried clearly throughout the ballroom. Earlier today, I was mean to the man who just saved my life, she said, looking directly at Alex, who stood near the service entrance. I called him names and made fun of him in front of my friends. I knocked over his equipment and then blamed him for it, even though it was my fault. The crowd stirred uncomfortably, recognizing the moral complexity of what they were hearing. If he had decided to ignore me tonight, if he had stayed away because I was cruel to him, I would have died, Ava continued, tears streaming down her face. But he didn't ignore me. He saved me even though I didn't deserve it. She turned toward her mother, her young face showing a maturity that came from confronting mortality. Mom, I need you to make this right. Not later, not privately, but right here in front of everyone. I was wrong, and everyone who saw me be wrong needs to see me apologize properly. The ballroom fell into absolute silence. Even the camera operators found themselves holding their breath, uncertain whether they were documenting a private family moment or witnessing something larger. Evelyn Hart looked at Alex, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not as background staff or invisible labor, but as the man who had risked everything to save her daughter when she herself had been powerless to help. You're right, Ava, Evelyn said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. We need to make this right. She walked over to Alex, extending her hand in a gesture of respect and gratitude. I don't know how to thank you properly for what you've done tonight, Evelyn began, her corporate composure giving way to genuine emotion. But I can start by acknowledging that my daughter treated you terribly this morning, and that I failed as both a mother and as a leader by not addressing it immediately. The crowd watched in fascination, as one of the most powerful CEOs in the city publicly acknowledged fault and showed genuine humility. Furthermore, Evelyn continued, any disciplinary action that may have been considered against you for tonight's security breach is immediately cancelled. Instead, I want to publicly thank you for your quick thinking, your preparedness, and your courage. Spontaneous applause began somewhere in the back of the room and spread throughout the ballroom. It was not the polite, measured applause of corporate events, but the genuine appreciation of people who had witnessed something extraordinary. Alex shifted uncomfortably in the spotlight, unused to being the center of positive attention. I just did what anyone would do, he said simply. No, Ava interrupted from her stretcher. Not anyone would do that. Not everyone carries medical equipment just in case someone needs help. Not everyone knows how to help when everything goes wrong. And not everyone would help someone who had been mean to them. The institutional changes came swiftly. Jordan transformed the evening's crisis into a powerful narrative about corporate values and community responsibility. Rather than hiding the incident, the company embraced it as a demonstration of their commitment to treating all employees with dignity and respect. Effective immediately, all company events will maintain unlocked emergency exits during live broadcasts. Evelyn announced to the gathered staff, the following Monday. Employee safety takes precedence over media presentation concerns. Marcus, initially resistant to changing security protocols, found himself genuinely impressed by Alex's combination of technical knowledge and emergency response skills. I've recommended him for additional training in emergency medical response, Marcus told Evelyn. We could use someone with his instincts on our crisis management team. Alex was offered a part-time consulting position designing safety protocols for corporate events, with the explicit understanding that his primary commitment remained to his daughter and their evening routine. I can work some weekends and occasional evenings, Alex told Evelyn during their meeting. But I promised Mia I'd be home for dinner every night I possibly can, and I intend to keep that promise. That's exactly why we need you, Evelyn replied. Someone who understands priorities will help us get ours right. 2 weeks later, Alex opened the door of his modest apartment to find Evelyn and Ava on his doorstep, carrying a large envelope and looking somewhat nervous. We wanted to thank you properly, Ava said, handing him a handwritten letter. And to meet Mia, if that's okay. Mia peeked out from behind her father, curious about the well-dressed visitors. Ava knelt down to her eye level, suddenly looking very much like the 12-year-old she was rather than the sophisticated young woman she often pretended to be. Your dad is a hero, Ava told Mia sincerely. He saved my life, and he's probably the bravest person I've ever met. I know, Mia replied with 8-year-old matter-of-factness. He's been my hero my whole life. The two girls quickly discovered a shared interest in art, and within minutes they were sitting at Alex's kitchen table drawing pictures together while the adults talked quietly in the living room. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, Evelyn said to Alex. Not just the emergency, but everything leading up to it. The way my daughter treated you, the way our corporate culture has created such distance between different levels of employees. Alex nodded, though he seemed more focused on watching the girls laugh together over their drawings than on corporate policy discussions. I want to do better, Evelyn continued. Both as a mother and as a CEO. Ava's going to be volunteering with maintenance staff for the next few months, learning about the work that keeps our building running. It's not punishment, it's education. That's good, Alex replied simply. Everyone should understand how things work. As evening approached, Alex prepared dinner for 4 instead of 2, stretching his grocery budget to accommodate unexpected guests. The simple spaghetti meal he had promised Mia became an impromptu celebration of new friendships and second chances. The photograph taken that evening, Evelyn, Ava, Alex, and Mia gathered around the small kitchen table, laughing over plates of spaghetti, would later hang in both the CEO's office and Alex's living room, as a reminder of the connection that had grown from crisis. 3 months later, Alex found himself teaching emergency response procedures to a room full of corporate executives and security personnel. The training program he had developed focused on practical skills and situational awareness, drawing from both his military background and his experience as a father constantly alert to potential dangers. Marcus sat in the front row, taking careful notes as Alex demonstrated proper use of EpiPens and explained the signs of various medical emergencies. The key is preparation and paying attention, Alex explained to his audience. Most emergencies happen fast, but they usually have warning signs if you know what to look for. The company had implemented his recommendations comprehensively, installing emergency medical supplies throughout their buildings and requiring basic first aid certification for all management personnel. Ava attended every training session, having discovered a genuine interest in emergency medicine. Her volunteer work with building maintenance had evolved into a broader education about how organizations function and how different roles contribute to the larger mission. I used to think the important people were the ones in meetings making decisions, she confided to Alex during one of their regular conversations. But now I understand that the important people are the ones who make sure everything actually works. The corporate case study that emerged from the incident became required reading in business schools, though Alex remained uncomfortable with the attention it brought to his family. The academic analysis focused on leadership during crisis, the importance of cross-class empathy, and the power of public accountability. But for Alex, the real lesson was simpler. Doing the right thing in small moments created the foundation for doing the right thing when everything was on the line. The annual gala the following year took place in the same ballroom, but with notable changes. Emergency exits remained unlocked throughout the event, medical personnel were stationed visibly among the guests, and all food was clearly labeled with comprehensive allergy information. Alex attended as an honored guest rather than invisible staff, though he spent most of the evening checking exit routes and noting the locations of emergency equipment. Old habits born of responsibility never fully disappeared. Ava, now 13 and considerably more thoughtful about her words and actions, introduced Alex to the crowd during her mother's keynote address. Last year, I learned that being important isn't about having power over other people, she said, looking directly at Alex. It's about what you do when someone needs help, especially when that someone hasn't been kind to you. The applause that followed was warm and sustained, but Alex found himself thinking about Mia, who was home working on a school project about heroes. She had interviewed him extensively for the assignment, asking detailed questions about the night he had saved Ava's life. Why did you help her even though she was mean to you? Mia had asked during one of their conversations. Because that's what good people do, Alex had replied. "We help each other, especially when it's hard." As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Alex reflected on how much had changed in the span of a single year. His life had not transformed dramatically. He still lived in the same apartment, still worked to support his daughter, still prioritized their quiet evenings together above corporate recognition or social climbing. But something fundamental had shifted in how he understood his place in the world. His skills, his preparedness, and his willingness to act had mattered in ways he could never have anticipated. The equipment he carried, the training he maintained, and the attention he paid to his surroundings had literally saved a life. More importantly, his response to cruelty with compassion had created ripple effects that extended far beyond one evening's emergency. Corporate policies had changed, a young girl had learned empathy, and dozens of employees had received training that might someday help them save lives too. The drive home took Alex through familiar neighborhoods where he had grown up, past the community college where he had earned his technical certification, and by the park where he and Mia spent weekend afternoons. These were the places that had shaped him, that had taught him the value of steady work and quiet integrity. His phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Dad, I finished my hero project. Wait until you see what I wrote about you." Alex smiled, already knowing that Mia's opinion mattered more to him than any corporate recognition or public praise. She had always seen him as a hero, long before he had saved anyone's life in front of cameras and crowds. The larger lesson, perhaps, was not about dramatic rescue or public redemption, but about the countless small choices that prepared someone to act when action was needed. Carrying an EpiPen, just in case. Learning first aid even when it was not required. Maintaining equipment carefully, treating people with respect regardless of their treatment in return. These were not the qualities celebrated in corporate newsletters or business case studies, but they were the foundations upon which genuine heroism was built. And in the end, they mattered more than business cards, job titles, or social status. They were the quiet strengths that allowed ordinary people to become extraordinary when the moment demanded it. And they were available to anyone willing to cultivate them. The real power, Alex had learned, was not in commanding attention or respect, but in being ready to help when help was desperately needed, regardless of who needed it or why. That readiness, that preparation, that commitment to serving others even when it was difficult or thankless, these were the qualities that defined not just good employees, but good human beings. And they were lessons that could be learned by anyone willing to look beyond their own immediate concerns and consider how their actions might serve the larger community. As Alex pulled into his apartment building's parking lot, he reflected on how the evening had begun with Ava's public humiliation of him, and had ended with a community of people committed to treating each other with greater dignity and respect. The transformation had not happened because of grand speeches or policy changes, but because a 12-year-old girl had found the courage to admit she was wrong and to ask for help making it right. That kind of moral courage, Alex understood, was available to people of any age or station in life. It required only the willingness to acknowledge fault, to seek forgiveness, and to commit to doing better. In many ways, it was a more impressive form of bravery than anything he had done with an EpiPen and emergency training. The story that had begun with casual cruelty and class-based prejudice had evolved into something far more hopeful. A demonstration that people could change, that systems could improve, and that individual acts of kindness and courage could create lasting positive change. Walking up the stairs to his apartment, Alex carried with him the quiet satisfaction of a job well done and a life well lived. The recognition was nice, the policy changes were important, and the new friendships were valuable. But the real reward was simpler and more personal. He had acted according to his values when it mattered most. And in doing so, he had helped create a better world for his daughter to inherit. That was hero enough for any ordinary man.